Hey Techno Studs, in this video I thought it'd be fun to take a look at our web page and see what it looks like when it comes to Wireshark and digging into the packets and what packets are flowing in between my demo laptop and the demo Pi that we created. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Wireshark. So I'm going to click Wireshark down here to open it up, and the interface that we're looking at is going to be the Ethernet interface. So that's the one that we've been doing all of our configurations and stuff on. So let's take a look at this Ethernet interface here, and it comes up and it is plugged into a switch. And so we see some Cisco chatter that's happening back and forth. It's a Cisco switch. So there's some chatter that's happening back and forth. And what's happening is it's trying to do a spanning tree protocol, see if it's connected to another switch. We might see some Cisco discovery protocol in here, some dynamic trunking protocol. So we see some activity from the switch that's trying to reach out to this device. And most of this we don't really care about. What we want to do is we want to generate some traffic to our web page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a web browser, and then I'm going to go to our web page that we set up in my last video. And there it is. So once we've got that, we can minimize that. We can stop this because the rest of it's going to be, once again, once it's downloaded the web page, there's no live content, so it's not getting any more updates from this web page. And what we can do is we can filter out a lot of the extra noise that's in here by using the filter field right here. So we're going to do a filter, and the particular filter I'm going to filter off of is the IP address one. So I'll use this IP address one. Of course, this is the wrong. Let's do a 10.0.0, or excuse me, 10.1.0.3 is what we're looking for. So we hit that, and then we can see all of the traffic that went between this demo laptop and the Pi that has this web page. So then what I can do is I can look at this top section right here, and this is showing me all of the packets that went between these two devices. So I look here, I can scroll through. So a handful of packets that has gone through to these two different devices. And if I look here in the bottom right, I see some stats down here, and the stats say that it's displaying 16. So for this web page to load, there were 16 packets that moved back and forth between these two devices. Now, I'm not going to explain in depth into what each packet does, but let's just take a general overview, a look at this, and then in future videos, we will get much more detailed into this. So as I look through these different packets, once again, I can see that there's 16 different packets. One thing I can do is the time here is a column that is kind of hidden, so I can move it out to see what the timing is of this. And you can see that it all happens within the actual web page. Actually takes less than a second, just a fraction of a second to download. And then about 5 seconds later, then we see some other activity here. I'm not too concerned with the time, so maybe I actually want to minimize that. I can expand this source and destination. Now the stuff that you see with the source, if it says .14, that's going to be my laptop. If you see a .3, that's going to be the Pi. So what we see is that there's a couple packets that went to the Pi, and then this is a request that essentially is going to the Pi. And then there's a couple packets that came back from the Pi, and then came back to the demo laptop. And then there's a few more packets that went to the Pi, and then it looks like a couple more that came back and a couple that went to the Pi. So you can see this kind of chat back and forth that was happening in here just by looking at the source and destination fields of this. And then we see the protocol. So the protocol is going to be, we talked about protocols, and we see that there's TCP. TCP is a layer 4 protocol that's happening. And then we see HTTP. So this is a layer 7 or a application layer protocol. And HTTP is the actual moving the web page or requesting the web page and then getting the web page onto this machine. And then we see how big each one of these packets are, and we scroll through here. We see a couple big ones here, and this has to do specifically with the HTTP traffic. So we'll take a look at those as well, and then some additional info that has been passed back and forth between here. And we won't get real in depth into each one of these once again at this point in time, but it's fascinating to see this communication that happens back and forth. And for a simple web page, I mean, there was just a few words, not that many words that we even transferred back and forth. In my last video, we saw how all the HTML code that we used, and it was very basic. And for that communication, there was actually 16 different packets that transferred back and forth. And so what this is the TCP established a connection. So we established a layer 4 connection, and then HTTP made the request and got the web page downloaded onto this machine. So then this demo laptop had that information that it could display. And then towards the end here, then it from a TCP level, it ended the connection. So it ended that layer 4 connection. So we established a communication, we transferred the data, and then we ended the communication here. And so, so yeah, it's pretty fascinating. And let's take a look at specifically the HTTP connection here. When we look at HTTP, this is a GET, so it's requesting information. It's requesting information from the Pi. And so it does this HTTP, it gets this GET to actually ask for that information. And then we get a 200 back, and that is then it's actually starting to send the data for that web page to get the web page loaded. And then we got a couple other HTTP wrap-up things that we see in here as well. So we see this information. These are the different packets in this first field right here. Then we look in the second field, and then we can start actually digging into, well, what does those packets look like? So maybe I want to take a look and see what the HTTP GET looks like. And so I click on here, and I see what the frame looks like. So we take a look at the layer 2, and we see information that's associated with the layer 2. And so some of the information that we see on this level is things like the MAC address. Let's jump down to this Ethernet layer 2 right here. So we see that it's coming from a Raspberry Pi right here. We see it's from a Dell laptop, so that all makes sense. And then we get to we get down into the layer 3 here, and we see layer 3 addresses, and it's IP version 4. We can see some versioning in here. We can see some IP addresses, so we can dig down and see what the layer 3 looks like, and then we can take a look at the layer 4 and see what the layer 4 looks like as we look at the sequencing and the acknowledgement, and so we can get some data from that. And then we can look at what is happening on the application layer and what information is being sent over with this. So we can pull all this data as we look at this, and now we can dig down into this information that's being transferred. So it's really cool. It's really fun to see the actual bits that are flowing back and forth. In fact, actually down here in the bottom, we can, if we up here at the top, select certain elements of this, or we could even dig down even more granular, like the versioning. This will show you the portion of the packet here that shows the actual versioning, the actual bits that are happening down here. Or I can right click on this and say, show it as hexadecimal. So in fact, actually, you're probably, by default, it's probably going to show you as hexadecimal. So if you want to see the binary, right-click down here, and you can switch it to see the show these as bits instead. So there you go. So there's a little more about Wireshark and the data that we're looking within Wireshark. It's pretty cool stuff. So yeah, it's I recommend just jumping in there and generate some traffic and just playing around with it and seeing what this traffic looks like.